Plural? Does the budget stretch to that?
I see what you did there, because we don't.
Here's one of them.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Simon. You all right?
Yes, thanks, apart from this bad back, which means I can't move anywhere.
Why did he say it like that?
I think it's dramatic effect.
Simon, do you have our other guest with you?
I'll just get him. Hang on.
I thought you had a bad back and couldn't move.
What other guest?
Here he is. Excellent. I said that because our guest is a...
Oh!
A Cyberman. Oh, this is going to be a classic episode.
A Cyberman wearing a hoodie. And quite a lot like the one Simon had on.
Ah, you spotted that. I am wearing an identical hoodie as the human Simon. This is for logical reasons that I can't go into right now.
Well, fair enough. But where's Simon now?
I'll go and get him. Hang on.
Oh, now he's gone.
Hello, sorry, just had to, ow, my back.
Look, this is all a bit contrived, don't you think? Simon, why were you pretending to be a Cyberman?
Wait, what?
I'm right, aren't I? This elaborate plan of his must have been conceived for some reason.
Richard told me to.
All right. It doesn't work on Zoom, but listeners will think we've got two guests and one of them's a classic monster. Like, we've pushed the boat out.
Yeah, that's even more contrived.
Hang on. You mean it's not a real Cyberman?
Sorry, Giles. Richard said if I doubled up roles, I'd get twice the fee.
Yeah. Well, it is true.
How much is the fee?
Well, we don't actually pay, but you've got a book out. I thought you'd welcome the exposure.
You're a monster.
Yeah, all right.
Now that is a twist.
Welcome to the podcast where we take something old, a Doctor Who story from the original series, compare it with something new, one from the new series, and add something borrowed, the idea for the sketch, to make Something Who. Hello, I'm Richard, and we're back with Something Who podcast episode 83, where this time we're looking at two stories that introduce new companions. We'll look at First Doctor story The Rescue from season 2, and after that we'll examine the 11th Doctor's debut in the 11th Hour from series 5. And with us this time we have writer Simon Guerrier, well known for writing works of both fiction and non-fiction, and making contributions to the Doctor Who DVD and Blu-ray ranges. And currently he's the author of David Whittaker in an exciting adventure with television, which tells the little-known story of the man who was Doctor Who's first story editor, and also a prolific writer of quality stories from the show's first decade. Simon, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's very exciting.
Well, it's exciting for all of us, I think. Yeah, I think we've got a good choice of subject matter in honour of your appearance here, so that's good.
Yeah, it's thrilling. I'd never really thought about The Rescue and the 11th Hour, but actually sitting and watching them together, I've spotted all sorts of things that kind of cross between them. So yeah, really interesting thing to do.
Fantastic. We've also got science and astronomy writer Giles.
Evening. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. And we've also got our resident storyteller, Paul.
Yes, our resident storyteller. Yes, hello. Nice to meet you all again. It's like the tavern, a virtual tavern in here. Sorry, that makes it sound very cliquey, doesn't it? Cut that out. We don't want the listeners thinking we're all just some sort of old boys network. Oh God, I'm really digging a pit here that I didn't need to.
Yeah, don't let them in on that, because that's a secret.
Yeah, for posh Guardian readers who anyway.
Yeah.
So
we're all off to the secret screening of Power of the Daleks later.
Yeah. I'm surrounded by professional writers. Anyway, look, we've not been around for a while, and it's all kicked off in our absence. It seems to me that RTD has finally made good on Stephen Moffat's 50th anniversary promise of more Doctor Who than ever before. all on the iPlayer.
Isn't it exciting that we could do our homework on iPlayer? I thought that there was a particular thrill of going, oh, I can just look that up. It's right there in front of me. I don't even have to reach over to the shelf to take down a DVD.
It definitely saved me some faffing around because we've been having our living room done over. All the AV equipment and stuff is currently cluttering up my study, so I've not had enough room so I've had to have gone and plugged everything in again from scratch and then found the DVD.
The one thing that surprised me, I didn't see this coming, is that not only have there been no missing episodes for the 60th anniversary, but we've actually gone and lost 4 other ones.
Oh dear.
There will always be 101 missing episodes on the iPlayer.
Yeah. Well, that's all we need to say about that, isn't it? I'm glad that you can still make light of it. There's nothing upsetting about this situation at all. It's just wonderful. It's so humorous.
Oh, I remember watching UK Gold where they didn't show Dalek stories; they just skipped those ones.
Those were the days. Weren't they?
Yeah, and then they all came back in one big cache, so they just ran all the Dalek stories all the time. I've long lived with my disappointment in Doctor Who. It's fine.
Well, we have still got them on our shelves, haven't we? If we can ever be bothered to if we haven't lost the knack of reaching up to fetch them down with our own physical hands, which will no doubt continue to atrophy the more we get used to everything being on iPlayer.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think I can see An Unearthly Child now, but the only problem is if I get it down off the shelf, it'll probably bring half of the other DVDs with it, so I think I'll leave it right now.
Okay.
And we're going to lose 4 more episodes on November 23rd, aren't we? And suddenly they're cutting the Daleks in half.
Very clever.
But, it's in full colour.
Yeah, this is true.
And we get both. That's not taking away. That's adding.
No. Yeah, exactly. It's just the attitude of some people.
Yeah.
It's a bit like...
I'm looking forward to that. Of all the many things that are interesting about it, I'm keen to see what Mark Ayres has done with the music. Will it be a completely new score, or do you think it will be inspired by the original atmospherics of Tristram and Carey, but modernised? We shall see. But I don't mind if it's just another score from Mark Ayres, because he's one of my favourites.
Yeah, it's exciting. And it's just that idea that I mean, I spend my whole time engaging in Doctor Who in one form or another, trying to tell new stories that are based on it or find things to say about it and features and stuff. And the kind of hope is that this version of the Daleks will kind of encourage people who'd never normally watch that story to kind of dig into it. I find that really exciting, that there's the potential for a whole new audience to come crash in on us and basically tell us that we've been getting it wrong all this time. I remember the excitement when Tomb of the Cybermen was found and came out on video, and suddenly everybody could watch it and didn't just have to take the word of the people who'd seen it back in the 60s. And it kind of completely changed a lot of the kind of narratives about Doctor Who and what was a good story and what was a different story, and kind of allowed people to have their own opinions. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping we'll see something similar to that. It's potentially very, very exciting.
Yeah. You can never have too many different gateways for people to get into the program, can you? I mean, the Twitch thing the other year showed that some of the younger generation watched the real thing if you put it in a medium that they're familiar with. But that's worked for some people, and this will work for other people. People who like colour, people who like speed, whatever. Anything we can use to get them in.
Yeah. So potentially very exciting.
And here's me talking about it like it's only the young people that will be excited by a colour zippy version of the Daleks. Of course I will. I'm not getting any younger. I haven't got enough years left of me to watch the real thing. I agree.
Well, it's full circle for me because I essentially became a fan reading that David Whittaker novelisation of the story, and then I saw episode 2 in the very early 80s in a cinema in Bradford, so that was very exciting as well. So yeah, all these years later, watching a colour version, it's one of the great stories.
Was that at the Film and Television Museum?
Yeah, something like that.
Yes,
it was
whatever it was called that was up there.
I was familiar with the Peter Cushing movie first before I read the book. So I've seen some people humorously saying a 75-minute colour version of the Daleks. Didn't Milton Subotsky get there first? Or indeed David Whittaker? But while that's a very whimsical thing to point out, it might even be interesting to see if the the edit of the story goes down similar routes. So many things to look forward to.
Yeah.
Just with less Roy Castle.
Talking of Mark,
Go on.
I had to say I went to a very good event at the BFI on the weekend, which is part of Dick Fiddy's time travel season they're having there at the moment. We had an hour and a half of nerding out about the TARDIS with Malcolm Thornton, but the highlight of it was Mark Ayres coming on stage and getting his laptop out and spending about 20 minutes playing an audience of rapt Doctor Who fans various different TARDIS interior sound effects from over the years. And I was thinking, this is about the nerdiest thing, but everyone was absolutely enraptured. I never realised quite how different some of the sound effects were between the pilot and An Unearthly Child as it aired, for instance.
I thought you were going to say they brought a piano frame and a Yale key on stage or something like that.
Did he still have his little beard? I nearly didn't recognise Mark when I watched the Proms Gala music thing the other day.
Yes, yeah.
Good, suits him.
He did, yes. Yeah.
This is vital commentary we're getting into now, isn't it?
I guess we should probably actually do the thing we promised to do, which is to talk about the stories. So,
yes, indeed.
So let's kick off then with The Rescue, written by David Whittaker and directed by Christopher Barry. I didn't see this until the late 90s on UK Gold. So, unfortunately for me, by the time I got to watch it, it was already 20 years after I'd read The Making of Doctor Who, which gave away the key plot twist. So, the problem was, it wasn't so much of a whodunit as a whydunit. And I guess I'm interested. I mean, I don't know if any of you managed to get there before you'd had the spoiler. But if you hadn't, I wonder what the experience would be like for someone who had.
I can't tell you, but I'm going to reach behind me to my trusty Doctor Who programme guide and see if it's given away in the summary, which I assume it was, in which case the answer was at a very young age.
That's true. I probably would have picked it up from there. I would have first seen it in the Venerable Rescue and the Romans VHS box set when that came out.
Right.
Because they did the two of them, 2 tapes in a chunky box. Because the novelisation was relatively late, wasn't it?
Yes. It's. I made a note. It was January 1988.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And that glorious late golden era when Nigel Robinson started.
Yeah, yes. I didn't read any of those, unfortunately.
Oh, you missed out, mate.
Simon.
Yeah, I hadn't read the novelisation. I think it was either UK Gold or the VHS release that I first saw it on, and I don't think I knew.
Ooh.
Wow.
I certainly don't remember, because I didn't know a lot of these stories when I first watched them. And maybe I'd skim, I had a copy of the programme guide and I'd skim through it and things, but I tended to read the ones I already knew. Yeah, so I don't remember knowing it.
Yeah, very sensible approach. Sorry, go on.
But I was going to say that the Christopher Barry's notes on an earlier draft of the script survive, and I've not seen the originals, but both Marcus Hearn and Alan Barnes have written about what's in them in Doctor Who magazine. And there seems to have been a point where Bennett wasn't Coquillian, and Coquillian was an extra character.
Ooh. And
Christopher Barry's notes were kind of suggesting, what is motivating Coquillian? Why is he doing this? Is he just bad? And in working that out, they make him Bennett, which I find quite interesting. And then the other...
Wow.
Go on.
And I was going to say the other thing I find really interesting is that the story was commissioned because they weren't quite sure what they were going to do after the original 52 episode run of Doctor Who at the end of that production block, which finishes with the Dalek invasion of Earth. So as I'm sure you know, the original plan was that they were going to introduce a new character to take over from Susan in that story. And having said goodbye to Susan, they'd then find this new character had stowed away in the TARDIS. But because they weren't sure what was going to happen next, Donald Baverstock, a bit like he did the year before with The Edge of Destruction, was kind of like, well, let's finish it with the Dalek invasion of Earth and then introduce the new character in a 2-part story that follows it. But also, at the time he was saying that, they weren't sure that Barbara and Ian were going to continue in the series. Jacqueline Hill and William Russell weren't contracted until the end of September 1964. So the rescue was probably conceived to introduce a whole new family of characters, if need be.
Okay.
Or it could have been, if Barbara had stayed on, it would have introduced 2 new characters. If Ian had stayed on, it would have introduced 2 new. So there's all of that, which I find quite... There's a kind of... I'm not sure when David Whittaker began writing, but certainly in conception that must have been in the mix, which is why it's a passenger ship. There could have been any number of survivors, any combination of survivors
and Vicky
to make that work. Yeah.
So yeah, and I guess also combining the characters of Bennett and Coquillian saved them £2.50 in the budget as well.
Yeah, well, there's always that. Generally, it's something that Big Finish picked up fairly early. The fewer characters you have, the more they all get to do, and the better the characterization is. So yeah, you can see that in just it's a quite a good story editing thing of just going, these 2 characters, if they're the same person, they're just a more interesting character. You get the opposite of that in The Enemy of the World, also written by David Whittaker, where they split out Astrid Ferrier and a character called Faria. And by dividing up sort of plot function into 2 characters, I think they make Astrid a bit of a less interesting character, because Faria is the one who has the sort of backstory with Salamander.
Astrid, isn't it, or parents?
And Astrid losing that just makes her a bit less of a interesting character in the story, I think.
It's a great discipline, don't you think, Simon, writing for audio with that restriction on the number of characters you can have? I mean, it's a number of actors, and in theory you can have them all doubling up. But if you soon learn that it makes for a much stronger story if your main 5 actors or whatever play 1 character each, and you have as few people milling around in the background. Because on audio, you can't, unless you give them all ridiculous accents, it's much harder to distinguish once you go past a certain number of characters. But whereas on television you can have bit parts wandering in and out, and people will, the visual memory being what it is, people remember a character with a strong look, even if they only pop up here and there and everywhere.
Yeah, it's still difficult to establish somebody on screen so they're memorable. So generally, if you can have fewer, stronger characters, they'll be more memorable, I think.
It's interesting just because it's a case where you look at the story and you think, well, that's the entire mechanic of it, and that was the idea, and they wrote the whole thing from there. And it turns out to be, like a later thing that was then retrofitted into it, and yet it feels like it's the entire gimmick of the story.
That's 2 separate what-ifs that Simon's outlined to us, and either one of them makes the story less interesting and more commonplace, I think. If it's not got that enormous twist, it's less interesting. If it's not got that claustrophobic atmosphere with tightly controlled number of characters. It makes me wonder. I'm fascinated by the idea that it was the director, Christopher Barry, who thought it needed a little something extra, and that 2 very experienced writers, David Whittaker and his script editor Dennis Spooner, were perfectly happy with the original idea, and it was the director. It also makes me wonder if that has any bearing on the thing I was going to say way back when Richard called it Whodunit, and I didn't mean to be pedantic, because I know you didn't mean it literally, but of course it isn't a whodunit. It's almost like an inverse whodunit. There is no mystery. We don't spend the 50 minutes wondering what's going on, who is Coquillian, We're perfectly happy to take things for granted, to take Bennett's story for granted, to take for granted that Coquillian is the villain he appears to be. And the twist, I don't mean it comes out of nowhere in a bad way, but it's the opposite of a twist that we're waiting for. It's not an explanation for mysterious events. It's an extra bit of business, an extra bit of fun, which takes the story up to another level. So it's fascinating, the thought that might have come out of...
Christopher Barry's note seems to be Coquillian in the early draft was just bad, and he needed a bit more motivation and a bit of an explanation for what it is that's driving him. And one suggestion is that he would want to take over the TARDIS and things. And I think by combining the characters, you just get, Bennett is trying to cover up a crime, and that's what this is about.
Yep. And that's interestingly mundane, isn't it? That he's just a criminal, and as the Doctor says, and they really big it up. He's not just killed one or two people to cover up his crime. He's almost destroyed entire, committed genocide to cover up his own crime, which elevates him from a mundane criminal to an unintentional, supervillain. He's a very, very evil man.
And he's trying to bump off Barbara as well,
yeah.
Despite the fact that she has no bearing really on whether he's... I mean, I guess the more people that you bump off, the more danger you've got of revealing the fact that you're bumping people off, when what he's done so far is get rid of all the people who knew that he had committed a murder. But, I guess maybe you just get into the... you can't stop yourself. I don't know. I've never been a serial killer, so I can't really...
Yeah, it's a common problem once you start down that path. You just, the more you have to kill more people to cover your tracks. You have to kill more people because it's just so much fun. But either way, once you pop, you can't stop. It's interesting in how many ways this story also has built in, defences against criticism you might have of it. This is completely unintentional, but the fact that I imagine almost everyone who's ever watched it has thought, Quillian looks a bit rubbish. What another silly-looking Doctor Who monster, then it turns out to be a mask. Now, that's not deliberate. It's not being postmodern, but it's interesting that it can be read that way. And also, Bennett's plan is not so much overcomplicated, but it's a bit risky. He wouldn't really be able to fool anybody other than a young girl. He only gets away with it because it's Vicky.
And but you get the feeling that he's kind of extemporizing this plan as well. So it's all a bit, provisional, and he's making it up as he goes along.
Yeah, but he does, I think it's established that he does kill everybody else, all the grown-ups who might be in a position to scupper his plans, but he doesn't keep Vicky alive out of any noble sentiments. It's purely so that she can, because he thinks she's gullible and she'll back him up. Because when the rescue ship arrives, he's the only one left. It's going to look a bit suspicious. So it's a really watertight story, really. Unusually for this era. Why do I always have to damn everything with faint praise? Every story in this era is amazing, but this is even better.
I tell you what I like about this was the rapport of the Doctor, Ian and Barbara at the kickoff. That there's some really sort of warm scenes, and they seem to be sort of playing off each other really well. There's even an attempt at humour, and I mean we have had humour in the first series, but not so much among the TARDIS crew, I think. So I like that.
They've also, the cast have had 6 weeks holiday, and I think
yes.
That's why the Doctor having had a nap is a sort of in-joke, because they're all quite well rested. and are all kind of coming to it with a bit of a spring in their step.
It's nicely done, because it would have been very easy to start, I don't know, say with the way Resurrection of the Daleks starts, with the Doctor looking miserable because we know Tegan's just left. So when we start off with that light banter, we think, are they going to gloss over the Susan thing? That's not very good. Surely it would mean more to the Doctor than that. And then they get us just when we're not expecting it. They kick us in the fields.
I'd forgotten that this was Dennis Spooner. This is where Dennis Spooner does take over the script editor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to look that up, and it did strike me that even if you didn't know for sure, you could probably guess, because, and maybe Simon could correct me if I'm wrong here, but it does feel more, that opening scene feel more like Spooner than Whittaker. I'm not saying Whittaker couldn't write funny stuff, but the first season has not been known for scenes as light and breezy and Doctor as giggly as we get right from the off here.
Yeah, I mean, it might be Dennis Spooner, it might be rehearsals. I wonder if it's David Whittaker also attempting to kind of start again and make things a bit more friendly, because they've got there's such a full stop at the end of Dalek Invasion of Earth that this gives you a chance to kind of reset the tone of the series. But Dennis Spooner had been on Doctor Who for a good few months shadowing David Whittaker, and Whittaker had written probably 2 drafts of the scripts before he left at the end of October 1964. So there would have been a lot of collaboration between them, and my suspicion is that Whittaker was there for the read-through of the first day of rehearsals and may have been around anyway. Anyway, what I find what I found in researching all of this is it's very difficult to say exactly where one person's contribution stops and another starts, because they talked about it at the time as being a very collaborative, collegiate kind of way of working, and it's actually very rare that anybody takes credit for any particular bit of a script or a line of dialogue or a thing. So I think, rather than kind of going, this is a Dennis Spooner story, I think he was just in the mix, and that's not to denigrate or to lessen his contribution, but I think it's a much more malleable kind of process. Then he comes in, it becomes funnier. I mean, there is comedy in Doctor Who. There's in the first year of Doctor Who. I think the Doctor's engagement to Kamika is amazingly funny. Yeah, all of that kind of stuff is very it's very lightly handled, and Hartnell is clearly enjoying it all.
Yes, everything you say is right, but I'm going to, at the very least, I don't believe that anyone other than Spooner wrote the line where Barbara's line about the trembling stops, and the Doctor saying, "Oh, I'm so glad you're feeling better." That's not. But
why does the Doctor wake up feeling sticky?
Sticky. I don't know, is it a leather chair?
He shouldn't have had those toffees, I expect.
It is a trap textual analysts fall into all the time, isn't it? When you know who's worked on the script, you suddenly start saying, well, this storyline element must be introduced by person X because that's the sort of thing they do, and this line is... When anybody who's co-written something with somebody else will know that a few years later you look back and you can't remember who wrote what. And you often surprise yourself when you... And people who work closely together will adopt each other's styles if they're professionals to make sure that the thing coheres rather than pulling against each other. Anyway.
There are a couple of things where the characters are behaving a bit unusually. So the Doctor sends off Ian and Barbara to do a bit of exploring, and normally he's absolutely determined to be among them. And he I'll just grab a bit more of a nap, even though I've just woken up from a nap. I could do with a bit more of a nap. And then Ian is very unchivalrous with Barbara. He just sort of nips off back to the TARDIS and leaves Kikilian and Barbara together. So that just seems a little bit...
Yeah, I think in both those cases, so the Doctor doesn't go back for a nap. What he does is he goes...
Isn't it? Yeah.
It's cover to check his theory that he's been here before.
Right. Yes, okay.
And so he's letting them go off and explore and do the thing that he would normally do, which is very... Now we take that for kind of granted, that the Doctor gets his companions to kind of ask questions about where they've arrived and that kind of stuff. Yes, I totally get what you mean about the awkwardness of Ian leaving Barbara behind. I think that's a staging thing.
Right, yeah.
I think Ian is assuming that Barbara's right behind him. And it's just a bit awkward, partly because you've got, the thing that cuts Barbara's exit, that cuts that route off is Kikilian. And Kikilian, poor old Barrett, can't really see through the mask. Right. So he's a bit awkward on his feet. And he has those very big clawed feet as well. And the set is supposed to be a dark cavern, and it's a sort of wall of polystyrene. And I think that's... it's a little awkward, but I don't think I don't think the logic is at fault there. I think it's the slightly awkward staging of it.
When the Doctor dips back into the TARDIS and he successfully fools Ian and Barbara into thinking that he's not up to the job anymore, Ian's mime of the Doctor having gone a bit senile is a little cruel, isn't it? I mean, we can laugh, but should we?
No, it's undercut because the Doctor immediately pops up behind them and says, "I get it, what you're saying." Yeah. It's interesting. I'd forgotten how. Sometimes since I've seen it, I do enjoy this. So it's not something I've not seen for ages and ages. But I've forgotten how funny it was, and in some ways, there's a whole reset thing, because the thing that I always remembered thinking about in terms of it being a reset and almost, to my mind, this is where I always think about the confrontation with Kikilian at the end as being that's where the Doctor becomes the Doctor almost, in terms of what we know, how we know him from later, because that sort of, I loved that scene at the end, but I've forgotten that you not only have that sort of dramatic, okay, this is the Doctor going to have a showdown with the villain, and is clearly 2 or 3 paces ahead of the villain on various things, but you've also got that humour. And I was trying to think, is this also, because this is also, he's got the advantages of having been to Dido before, so he's got that foreknowledge. I'm trying to think, have we had that in the series before now? Have we had a reference to like the Doctor going to... I know we've had references to past adventures.
The trouble with watching things out of order like we tend to, if you're looking for firsts and, the development in the Doctor's character or the set of the programme, it's... I think what you tend to find is that a lot of things start earlier than you think they do, but it might be.
Yeah, it's the first story where he arrives with some foreknowledge of the place because he's been there before.
Yeah.
I mean, you get it in the historical stories that he's read history and things, which gives him a bit of a grounding. Yeah. But this is his previous travels give him an insight here. I think there's also, I mean, you were talking about the scene at the end, but there's loads of sort of what I suspect are very purposeful scenes. There's the scenes between the Doctor and Vicky that are very charming, where he wins her over. There's the sort of argument between Barbara and Vicky where they kind of have to reconcile things between themselves. Really, I think Ian's the one who doesn't get a great deal to do here. A lot of what the Rescue's doing is doing the kind of character stuff that we got in the very first Doctor Who serial, and certainly in that sort of first 13 episode block where they're working out their relationships between each other. And we get that in 2 episodes. It's a really concise bit of... by the time Vicky joins the TARDIS, we know the kind of family unit has cohered in the same way that it coheres by the end of The Brink of Disaster, episode 13. So yeah, I think all of that is really interesting to watch. What I found really interesting watching it for this is that a lot of the beats of that, which is that Vicky is quite, what's the word? She's quite forthright. She doesn't warm to them immediately. She's resistant. The Doctor starts talking to her about travelling in time and space, and she doesn't believe him. And she's won over by this confrontation with the monster. And also part of her fire is she's a bit of a tragic character. She's an orphan. That's all Amy Pond as well in the 11th Hour.
Yeah.
It's all the same kind of beats is the same, which I would have never have made a connection to otherwise.
That's good.
And this feels like also Barbara and Ian it feels like also a moment where they're a lot more coupley, and we obviously kind of expect that from the Romans onwards. But in this, they're quite kind of touchy-feely and very cosy together in a way that they haven't necessarily been in the past. I'm trying to think, certainly the Reign of Terror, was that the most recent one where they gave Barbara another love interest? So it feels like that sort of thing is cohering.
It's interesting that they do, I was going to say fast forward, they do go to great lengths to make sure that the relationships are solidified between these three just by the end of the 2 episodes, because at the next story we fast forward a month, don't we? And you might think that's sort of thing that a script editor might do, a bad script editor might do to cheat, so that by the time the Romans starts that they're all pally and you could just skip over the development, because as you said it took 13 episodes first time round. They might think, well, we've got to cheat it here. So it's like a belt and braces approach. Maybe they put that padding in, but they didn't need to because...
Yeah, I think part of it is when the series began, those first 13 episodes, our focus is on the 4 main characters. Once we get past that, our focus is on each new situation those characters come to. So they become much more, what's the word, sort of established, kind of rigid in who they are. And although we can explore aspects of them, actually the kind of adventures are about the worlds they meet and the characters they meet. So you stop getting, which you get quite a lot in those first 13 episodes, you stop getting episodes where there's nobody else but our 4 regulars. And so I think for a continuing series, we've kind of got to get over introducing Vicky and kind of go, this is it. And we're, nothing has changed. She's a different person, but basically we're carrying on we go.
Yep.
And that's kind of what those 2 episodes are doing. And if it was more difficult, if her arrival was more problematic, that would be a cue for the audience to resist the change. And we would be less welcoming to Vicky as viewers, which is lethal, basically. I think that there are subsequent companions where that becomes an issue, and you're kind of encouraging viewers to resist this handover.
The Doctor warms to Vicky very quickly. I mean, it's within, almost seconds, I suppose, of the 2 characters coming together that he's sitting down and exercising charm. So, yes. In fact, I wrote down a moment of charm. It's Pertwee-esque almost. He's turns it on full bore.
It's lovely, and it's doing exactly the same thing as Matt Smith with the apple with Amy Pond, kind of winning her over to this mad world that he's part of. And yeah, I do think it's rather deftly done.
I think it's also really well designed, the whole story. I kind of felt like, given that the space they had to record in is, barely bigger than the ground floor of a house, they've somehow managed to get all of those sets in place. They've got a rather lovely model. They've got that fantastic shot early on where you've got Ian and Barbara on a ledge looking across to the model, and somehow that worked. Well, maybe there's inlay involved, but however they've done it, that somehow works. But and indeed the way that the set of the rocket kind of marries up with the model. I mean, the only thing I've got against it, and I think this is only to do with the amount of space they had, is it's kind of hard to conceive where all of the inhabitants of the passenger ship would have been from what we see. Unless there are, I didn't really think about it, unless there's something else in the model that we don't see on the sets.
I think there's what it does very well is, I think Russell T Davies has referred to it as vertical storytelling, which is where you hide the fact that a studio floor is all on one level. So you have the mountains, and you have the view from the mountains looking down. You have the floor of the spaceship is not horizontal. You have a trapdoor that leads to a passage underground. So you have this sense of this kind of 3-dimensional space that really sells it, I think. So many studio-bound stories look like they take place in a studio, and this does a really good job of hiding that.
Good point. Same with Sandy and the precipice of Mile Peril. With that bit, again, but you've got the height, and personally, I've got a soft spot for old Coquillian, and the design. I think it's quite effective, and the fact you get it mirrored on the big masks, the big door, not door thing, the thing that produces the spikes.
Yeah, that's interesting, because Daphne Dare, the costume designer, told DWB that she didn't design Coquillian for the story, that it was something they had in stock, some sort of operatic costume.
Oh, okay.
So, that may be why it looks like they've spent some money on it, because they didn't. It's just something that already existed. But also, what that means is that Ray Cusick, designing the sets, kind of then took his cue from there. I think if I'm right, aren't some of the designs drawn by Chris Thompson? They're in the Doctor Who the early years. Chris Thompson, who went on to be the designer of Evil of the Daleks.
Yeah.
Delving
for our copies. I can see Richard excavating. He's got one to hand more easily than I have.
I think I've got one here as well. There's Coquillian, yeah. But what that's doing is it means you've got costume and set design kind of collaborating consciously. And, we kind of tend to think of that as the sort of thing that Roger Murray Leach and Jim Atchison did in the early days of Tom Baker to great effect. And that's going on here. And I think it really works.
Chris Thompson, you say?
Yeah, is that right?
Yes, that's right. In the bottom corner there, yeah, of the door knocker thingy.
Ah, yes, yeah. Podcast gold, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll just flick through the pages noisily.
Holding up pictures from a God help us 40-year-old book.
Yeah. Well, still great. Yeah. So it stands up your story anyway, Simon.
Good. I'm glad. I have studied that book at great length over the last year, gleaning everything I possibly can from it.
I was going to say, just in regard to the storytelling mechanics and so on, the fact that this thing about that the Doctor knows, and it's neat because the Doctor knows and has the experience of having been on Dido before, he can then be our route into the mystery of, okay, so it gives us some insight into the people of Dido, because otherwise if you've only got Coquillian as the representative, how would you know that there was a mystery about why they had changed, and that the Doctor's impression of them is that they're peace-loving people, and so Coquillian is something out of the ordinary. If you want to tell that sort of story, it's a clever innovation to have the Doctor know that. I also noticed that because Barbara describes the Doctor as being from a different age, a different planet altogether. Is that possibly the first confirmation that the Doctor's an alien? Although admittedly it's from Barbara's point of view rather than out of his mouth.
I think it's no, because Susan talks about her planet having an orange sky, doesn't she?
Ah, yes. I was trying to remember because I get mixed up between the pilot episode and the Unearthly Child as televised and what did or didn't happen, because that just pinpointed them to coming from a certain time, didn't it? I think the pilot.
Another world, maybe, but I'd have to look at the transcript to be sure. So one other thing that I came across in this was that the second episode, Desperate Measures, is really highly rated. It has 13 million viewers, and it apparently was in the top 10 of TV programmes for that week, which was quite an unusual occurrence in that era. So it's interesting. So you think to yourself, well, Dalek Invasion of Earth, there's people got excited about Daleks and they've kept watching it into The Rescue, but it's not episode 1 of The Rescue that's the highest rated. It's episode 2. So they've seen episode 1 and they've enjoyed it well enough to come back for episode 2 along with some of their mates. So I guess 1965 viewing public thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult to. There are all sorts of things that can factor into figures like that. So Dalek Invasion of Earth is being shown over Christmas, and then the the rescue begins kind of in New Year. So are people busy those weekends? And the second episode is when none of those Christmas, New Year commitments get in the way. And maybe the weather's not great and people are staying in. There's quite a lot of correspondence of this kind of debate within the BBC, not about Doctor Who, but about channels. How do you know why an episode has done well? What they tend to do, rather than look at particular episodes, is look at trends. And the trends analysis is basically that Doctor Who has come back for season 2 with high figures for Planet of Giants, kind of in anticipation of the Daleks, and they have stayed high. They have remained consistent and have gone up. That is the big mark of a successful show. You see it in magazines as well. The idea is that you have a big launch, does very well, and then your audience tapers off. And you attempt to win them back. So anything that starts well and then builds upwards is a big success. So this is a hit show. Fluctuations week by week can lead you astray. It's the overall analysis to keep an eye on. But yeah, they knew it was doing well.
It's interesting because it's also, I just had a quick flip around on Wikipedia and assume that those are accurately quoted, because it's not only getting very high ratings, but it's also got a pretty high appreciation index for the time, like 57, 59. It's in the same league as Dalek Invasion of Earth in that regard, and ironically, it's the Romans. Much loved fan favourite, the Romans starts off rating still pretty highly, but that's where the appreciation index goes off a cliff.
The general feeling in the Doctor Who production team, and this is, you can see this in their own correspondence and stuff that survives at the Written Archive Centre in Caversham, their general feeling is sci-fi stories with monsters are the ones that do well, and that when you do historical stories, the audience just tapers. There's audience research where they go out and talk to basically people on the doorstep, and the anecdotes are repeated over and over again. Oh, I found the historical one boring. When are they going to get into space again?
Do we know that they've spotted that already?
Yeah.
But they carry on.
Well, yes, but they're also attempting to do things with it. And they're adjusting the stories. You can definitely see Dennis Spooner attempting to do stuff with that. So the chase and the time meddler are mixing up the history and the sci-fi. Yeah, I mean, it's a while off yet, but Jerry Davis and Innes Lloyd are kind of like, we just need to knock these historicals on the head. The trend has been clear for some time.
If the lesson is being learned by Verity Lambert and Dennis Spooner, it's possible that when they leave and John Wells comes in, that learned lesson goes out the window and they jump back on the historical train and have to learn it all over again.
I think there's some very odd things going on in that handover. Yeah, that's a debate for another time, I think.
It is, isn't it? Yep.
Yeah. Why have you made that choice? Why have you made that choice? Why have you made that choice? Yes, it's all a bit odd.
We'll file that away for when they find the Mythmakers and the Massacre, Richard, and we'll carry on the discussion then.
Well, so perhaps slightly more on brand then. So this is David Whittaker's first freelance contribution. It's presumably his first freelance piece of writing, because it's, as you say, he actually starts it while he's still contracted to the BBC, although they can't say that. And then he goes on and fairly soon afterwards writes The Crusade.
It's a bit more complicated than that.
Go on then.
So he wrote The Edge of Destruction freelance as well.
Okay.
But since he began at the BBC in 1957, he wrote an awful lot of stuff freelance. He was very, very busy. So he was probably earning before he got Doctor Who, when he was a script editor in Light Entertainment and on the Sunday night play, he was probably earning about 1,800 quid as a salary. He had an allowance and was meeting it and kind of going over the top of his allowance to write another £1,000 worth of material in his own time. So he was effectively adding to his salary by 50%.
Yeah.
That's a lot of writing. What happens in about October 1963, around the time he's commissioned to write what becomes The Edge of Destruction, is the Writers' Guild. It wasn't called the Writers' Guild at that point, I don't think, but what is now the Writers' Guild of Great Britain began to get very exercised about what they referred to as shopping down the corridor. Script editors and story editors commissioning each other, and it kind of being a closed shop. And that seems to be why David didn't write a longer story for the first year of Doctor Who. There was for a while it looked like he was going to write a story about the Spanish Armada. He may have earmarked the French Revolution story for himself as well. He couldn't do that. And all his writing outside of Doctor Who, outside of his staff job, stops as well. In the period he's on story editor of Doctor Who, he gets one comedy sketch on TV. That's it, which is, compared to what he was doing the year before, is where he wrote 7 episodes of Compact and sketches and songs and whatever else. So I think that's partly why he leaves, because it's he can't take up these opportunities he's being offered. And what he does is he then goes off and does the novelisation of the Daleks, and he does the Dalek Annual. So he's still, the creative output is still as extraordinary and prolific, but it's not working in television. Once he delivers the rescue, as I say, before he leaves. There's certainly paperwork saying that they had scripts before the end of October 1964. He's commissioned on the 1st of November for that story retroactively and for The Crusade. And I think The Crusade is the first story he writes outside the building, so to speak.
Okay.
And I think you can see a marked difference. he's trying to do adult drama and pushing the boundaries of what Doctor Who can be. And I think you can see that in the Crusade. There's some extraordinary stuff in the Crusade for what's a family show, and I think that's him trying to escape the shadow of Doctor Who. And you can compare the Crusade to the stuff he's doing he wrote 2 episodes of a series called Undermined for Robert Banks Stewart. And there's a similar kind of thing of trying to push what you can do in drama there and trying to escape the shadow of kids' telly.
And then after that, it's a while before he comes back to the fold. A year or so, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, so after the Crusade, he novelises the Crusade.
Yeah.
But he's pitched something. He's got a story called The New Armada, which Jerry Davis finally rejects in January 1966 and says, we don't really want to do stories like this anymore. Can you come in and have a chat? But he's busy on other stuff. He's working on the Dalek movie. He's working on other movies. He's working on telly for ITV. And I think my suspicion is he was trying to get away from Doctor Who and the BBC and establish himself.
And then just when he was out, they dragged him back in.
Yeah, I think by the time of Power of the Daleks, things are very different for him, but also for the show. And they are keen to have a reliable, pair of hands come in to oversee that transition. And they get Chris Barry back in as director, and they get David as the writer. You can kind of see them kind of going, we need this to be handled right.
Okay. No, so, I mean, that's fascinating. Go on, Paul. You're about to say something.
Well, I was just going to say that's about as far as we can go without getting too off topic for this podcast. But if anybody doesn't know the story, what happens to David Whittaker in his last few years on Doctor Who and beyond, then do rush off and watch the documentary. Where was it? What was it on again?
And buy Simon's book.
And the book, yes. Forget the documentary. Burn your DVDs. Buy the book.
Yes, there's a documentary Looking for David made by Chris Chapman and Toby Haydock, on which I was their kind of assistant, which is on the season 2 set.
Oh, of course, that's where it was. Yes. So I mean, everyone has seen it, but if you haven't, I mean, you won't see it coming. It's extraordinary and horrific.
Oh, bless you. But all I was going to say is, I think the rest...
Not your documentary, so, I mean, the horrific, the second adjective was... Yes, carry on.
All I was going to say is, I think The Rescue, then, is the sort of closing bit of David Whittaker. He delivers he certainly worked on the final scene in Dalek Invasion of Earth. We can see what the scripts survive, where we can see what Terry Nation wrote. We can see how David Whittaker polished that final speech from William Hartnell. Terry Nation wrote what was much more dialogue between the Doctor and Susan. David Whittaker makes it much more a speech from the Doctor, a much more heroic kind of speech, and really lays into it. And then the cast kind of polish that and take out. It's a bit overwrought in David's version, and the cast cut some of it and make it sing. I mean, that scene is beautiful. But before he leaves the office, David Whittaker delivers The Rescue, and that is him leaving the show in rude health to continue. And so The Rescue is his kind of parting shot as the story editor, I would say, basically setting it up to run and run and run.
Yeah.
Good job.
I mean, it is only 2 episodes, but I was startled actually how quickly it zipped through as I was watching it. I mean, even some of those individual 25-minute episodes from this era can feel quite slow, and this isn't one of those. Both of the episodes, to me anyway, as I was watching them, seemed like they were faster than I was expecting them to go.
Well, it's the length of an episode of Doctor Who now. So it feels kind of, it does a story in that.
Yeah.
And it has a monster, and it has an alien landscape, and it has, some plot twists and stuff. So, it's got something of modern Doctor Who about it, I think.
Anything else that anyone has got that they were desperate to say about this story?
No, but can I just say, if it's not too off topic, how interesting it is that we are discussing Maureen O'Brien's first story as Vicky, in the week where she's just returned to the role.
True.
After 58 years. It does strike me if that Tales from the TARDIS thing had been on telly rather than on an iPlayer should have snatched William Russell's record off him. Depending on how the good people at Guinness do their calculations, she may not have done. But she's runner-up anyway.
Yeah, it's also. I mean, I saw people kind of criticising Tales of the TARDIS because of the sort of emotional tone of it all, and yet you watch The Rescue and you go, that was there from the beginning. You know, the Doctor takes Vicky's hand. Vicky gets a great speech about her background. You know, what happened to her, and the camera sort of closes in on her and gets a really good wide shot and stuff. I was kind of like that right there. That's the same kind of emotional depth of stuff. I think it's been there. I think that's actually quite consistent. I think there are other periods of Doctor Who where that doesn't happen. Not meaning to criticise at all, but the Fifth Doctor and Tegan finally get to have a conversation about the trauma of the loss of Adric, and you kind of go, yeah, you didn't do that in Time Flight, did you? You know, that.
Yeah.
No.
She's thinking about this now, she's a remarkably naturalistic performer as well, Maureen O'Brien. You know, most of these are stage actors. I mean, she's a stage actor too, but nonetheless, she doesn't come across as a stage actor in a TV studio. She comes across, you know, kind of like a modern TV actor.
Yeah, she's really good, really good.
Yeah.
And, you know, and what a difficult, you know, people talk about Troughton coming in and being the first new Doctor. She's got to be the first new companion, and it's very well established. Not only is it very well established, but she's replacing the Doctor's granddaughter. So it's a big ask to make that relationship work. And it totally does. By the end of episode 2, you're totally, it's a very warm, you know, there's a lovely bit where they hold hands for the first time, and I totally buy it.
Great. Before we start talking about the other one, do you want sort of 2-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See you shortly. Right.
You'll like this bit.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. And it always looks utterly implausible because everyone's clapping at different times on the video, but somehow it comes together, sort of.
Somehow it works.
He spins podcast gold out of this sow's-ear of a clap.
Do you want to start the recording?
Oh, that's a good point. You see, this is also why I have other people on the thing, because they actually know what I'm supposed to be doing.
Have you already done a podcast with him, with his character Simon, or did you just meet in person?
We met in person.
Right. Very good.
I can't help feeling that you actually introduced us, Paul, at Missing Believed White.
Well, literally in person. Oh,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I remember it so well. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment.
Or possibly one of the Doctor Who screenings. It was something of that sort.
It might have been that.
Good. What a nice man I am.
Talking of the Fitzroy Tavern, by the way,
Oh, God.
we were talking about whether we ought to try and do something for the anniversary. Try to actually get people together. Try and inject some, get some people to come along who haven't been there for ages, and try and get some new blood and so on.
Si can be on top of that. He's had great success in this arena before. He's very persuasive. No, seriously. Why not?
So he's the only person who turned up.
If we don't do it this year, this November, whenever.
Well, exactly. So we were thinking about ironically, the 22nd rather than the 23rd, despite 23rd being a Thursday, just because of people wanting to potentially stay home and watch whatever goodies will be on the telly on the 23rd. And
have they heard about the iPlayer?
Sorry? Well, yeah. We're just, you never know what they might throw at us, though. So
Yeah, fair enough.
Possibly.
Fair enough.
But yes, I'm about to, I need to give them a call and then spread the word.
So I've only just seen that you wanted me to drop the line, but I did my own. I came up with my own solution to the repetition.
Yeah. Winging it like Peter Davison.
Just like it.
It was like he was in the room. I mean, I'm so used to Big Finish where immediately it'd be like, right, should we have another go at that?
Can we do that again,
Well,
loves?
we used to have another go at that.
And you wait till Lisa says, "That's the one," don't we?
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
they're good.
Yeah. And I mean, look, we could have another go at it if anyone feels like, now that they've had a crack at it.
Yeah. Do you think we get a bit more pace in there? You can tighten it up in the edit, can't you, Rich?
Yeah.
And the sound.
But you're right. I suppose if we have two goes at everything, then if something has gone horribly wrong, then I can always go to the other one.
Yeah. You also have to pretend that you're not recording the first one, because some actors get really shirty about it.
Right.
So, a bit late for that now, but for future reference.
Some actors.
Okay.
Paul, hey? Some actors.
Okay. I think we're all set. And just in time. Our guests are logging in now.
I'm sorry about that. I'm going to completely balls it up now because I somehow managed to lose my window with the script on it, which is not great. There it is. There it is. Right.
You mean you haven't learnt it?
Didn't have time for rehearsals. Yeah. Was too busy doing the blocking. Shall we just go
from the top?
Yes.
Okay.
Should we go for the top, loves? Yeah. Guess plural. Does the budget stretch to that?
I see what you did there, yeah, because we don't actually have a budget.
Yes. If I wasn't coughing. Here's one of them.
Hello, everyone.
No, sorry. No. Here's one of them. I'm getting worse. Keep going. Is that the one, Paul?
That's the one. Yeah, just take out all the longers, and it will be brilliant.
Yeah.
No, the performances were all there.
Great, and the coughs, fantastic. And with us this time we have writer Simon Guerrier, well known for writing works. Oh, sorry, that was the ooh, was it?
I was going to do an ooh, but I lost confidence very early in it. Ooh.